Porsche Taycan Turbo and Turbo S 2025 review. The Porsche Taycan Turbo and Turbo S were game changers when launched, proving an electric car could deliver proper sports car thrills and Porsche precision. Even now, more than 5 years on, rivals are still scrambling to catch up in tech, driving dynamics, and interior quality. In short, it's one of the very best electric cars you can buy. It's the kind of car that makes you question whether you really need a petrol engine at all, as our electric car group test against the BMW M5, Polestar 1, and Tesla Model S proved. The Taycan remains the electric super saloon benchmark. Should you buy a Porsche Taycan Turbo or Turbo S? If you want an electric car that drives like a proper Porsche rather than merely a fast computer, it's one of the finest EVs money can buy, although it comes with an elevated price tag, a record for poor depreciation, and some driving range limitations you might not expect. Here's how we test cars and why you should trust us. Pros: sensational acceleration, world-class handling. High-quality interior. Cons: expensive to buy. Where can you use that power? Limited 800 volts charging infrastructure. That's new. When it exploded onto the scene in 2019, the Taycan became the first electric car to seriously challenge the Tesla Model S in performance, desirability, and usability, whilst proving far more entertaining to drive. The Porsche Taycan is, to put it simply, everything we'd hoped for from Porsche's first ever in February 2024. Porsche introduced a facelift across the Taycan range. Styling changes were minimal. New front and rear light designs tweaked. Bumpers and aero details, but under the skin, the updates were more significant. The facelift brought improved battery management for higher efficiency. Slightly increased driving range figures. The WLTP claims jumped by around 35 to 40 miles depending on model. Revised suspension settings for better comfort. And charging speeds raised beyond the previous 270 kilowatts ceiling, now peaking at up to 320 kilowatts in ideal conditions. Interior tech also benefited from the latest Porsche communication management software. What are the specs? It is a full range of EVs, including the less powerful Porsche Taycan for S and a WD Taycan, and the practical Taycan, Sport Turismo and Cross Turismo. The Turbo obviously lacks an ICE car's forced induction, but with up to 690 bhp and 626 pounds-feet in the Turbo, and a staggering 939 bhp and 819 pounds-feet in the Turbo S, it easily eclipses the numbers previously expected in a mainstream Porsche. More than 200 miles of driving range is possible, although in our experience only in ideal conditions. Thankfully, it also charges in half the time of a Tesla Model S with some caveats. Naturally, and debuted Porsche's most technically stunning interior. Designed to date. Quite a thing then. All this juice powers to electric motors, one on each axle, meaning all-wheel drive, which Porsche describes as permanently excited, like a toddler on Haribo. Or the state of the motoring press since this car was revealed. It actually has something to do with magnets, not finally. The Taycan features a unique-to-speed transmission on the rear axle. The front uses a more standard one-speed planetary gear, which means huge -1 off the line and improved efficiency. Well, cruising out, how does it drive? First gear, as described above, is mainly present in Sport or Sport Plus driving modes, and particularly when you activate launch control. This is where the two Taycan Turbo models differ most. The regular Turbo, with its 690 bhp, cracks 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.0 seconds, and the 939 bhp Turbo S in 2.4 seconds. That's fast for sure, but not ludicrously fast. The difference between this and a Tesla, says Porsche, is that the Taycan can do this over and over again until the frail organic mass behind the wheel has had enough. But look, you're not going to do repeated launch starts unless you're a motoring journalist on a lunch break. So this ability is all about a Porsche showing off and be putting a comparable figure on the Taycan's sheer depth of performance. The theory being that if it can do those 2.4 second runs again and again, it'll have no problem at all accelerating out of the Stelvio Pass's sequential hairpins, for example. Also, you wouldn't use every last horse in something like a Ferrari 812 Superfast V12. You pay all that money to know they'll never run out, and it's the same here. It's about reserves. What's more interesting and useful in the real world is the 6-to-6 or 819 pounds-feet of torque you get, which punches the Taycan forwards with the sort of ferocity usually reserved for fight. A pilot's being catapulted off an aircraft. Carrier, you simply put your foot down and instantly find yourself somewhere else. There's no turbo lag or waiting for the torque curve or any of that nonsense. Just massive. Retina-detaching throttle response, thing is though, this is the same. Old story with every electric car, isn't it? Even a Renault Zoe can catch other drivers out with its off-puttingly silent straight-line performance. But they all fall apart the moment you try to get that weighty battery mass to turn into a corner. Yes, and no, it's not always silent for a start, because there's a special engine noise generator like the one in the Abarth 500E reserved for racier modes. It doesn't sound like a measure, but does at least give you a sense of what's going on as to address that curb weight. Stuttgart has thrown its entire arsenal of chassis tech at the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, but it's not reinventing the wheel. These are all things we've experienced before, including all-wheel drive, torque vectoring, adaptive dampers, rear-wheel steering, and electromechanical roll stabilization. And these all communicate with each other using Porsches for D-chassis, control to avoid conflicting inputs. Despite the huge performance on tap, the Taycan is actually lovely to waft around in. The 0 point to the Candelas drag coefficient makes this the slipperiest Porsche ever thanks to active aero and air suspension that can lower the car into stages. And that means it's quiet on a cruise save for the usual Porsche road roar, the Turbo with its smaller wheels is better than the noisier Turbo S in this instance, and it rides better too. What about the interior? Behind the wheel, and you'll notice that the Taycan is started with a big on, off button like Anne. Appliance, not a key or a starter. Switch. Porsche says the Taycan's dashboard takes its cues from the original 911's cleanly styled item from 1963. In so much as there are very few buttons and the new freestanding instrument cluster is wider than the steering wheel. That's where the two cars start to diverge, though the dials are displayed on a cowl-free 16.8-inch curved digital screen with touch controls for things like the lights and damper mode along the edge. The main infotainment screen measures 10.9 inches, and there's an optional supplementary display, so you can get the front seat passenger to program the sat-nav or choose which music to play, and so on. This means there's a two-door swath of black plastic, which looks very cool, although it's interrupted by breaks between the screens, annoyingly. Below all of this, there is another 8.4-inch touch panel for the air conditioning controls, and a notepad for entering addresses and things into the sat-nav. And if you spec the optional 4-zone climate control, then another 5.9-inch touch panel gets installed for rear seat passengers, in terms of size it's somewhere between a 911 and Panamera, with decent rear seat space enhanced by special recesses, and a battery under the floor in the rear called foot garages that boost legroom while keeping the seating position low. Headroom is okay in the back, but all passengers will have to remove their hats. Curiously, it's better in this sense when you spec the optional panoramic roof, which adds a few inches of room. There are no mechanically operated louvers for the air vents. You control the airflow from the climate screen, an innovation that's becomingly depressingly widespread. There's also a choice of leather tanned by olives or a completely hide-free interior complete with flooring made from old recycled fishing nets. Before you bite these cars, sit comfortably between the 911 and the Panamera in Porsche's price list, with the Turbo starting from 100,300 pounds, while the Turbo S begins at a hefty 162,200 pounds before options. As ever with Porsche, adding a few tasty extras can quickly inflate those figures while beyond list price. Rivals include the Tesla Model S Plaid, Audi e-tron GT RS, and the Lucid Air Grand Touring against the Tesla, which you can no longer buy in the UK in our HD form. The Taycan trades outright driving range and charging network coverage for vastly superior handling and build quality. The Audi feels similarly rapid, but doesn't match the Taycan's driving involvement. While the Lucid Air offers longer claimed ranges but remains a rare sight in Europe, the Turbo offers much of the Turbo S's performance and theater for a lower price, with only marginal differences in real-world speed, unless you're determined to own the flagship. It's arguably the smarter buy. The Porsche Taycan Turbo S is an incredible technical achievement. It does the things we all enjoy about driving. Accelerating, braking, going around corners with supreme alacrity, and features a massive well of capability largely untapped by normal driving. However, considering most will barely ever use the performance available, a lesser Taycan will make more sense for most, while the whir of electric propulsion feels robotic compared to a living, breathing combustion engine. This Porsche, with its combination of brutal performance and agile handling, moves the game on considerably by adding a bit of personality into the mix. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator 2 after he's learned to smile and say hasta la vista. Plus, with petrol engine cars becoming increasingly sanitized by turbos, particulate filters and autonomy, the void between EVs and the philosophical ideal sports car is considerably tighter than you'd expect, and the Taycan closes that gap further still.